All righty, gentlemen, we are live. And Clarence, I'm trying to follow in your footsteps and force myself to do video. So this is all on you, my friend.
No, it's on you, sir. You're going to do a great job.
Yeah.
All right, so we are live streaming. So I guess, gentlemen, as we say when we are recording on the Skypes, or as I usually say, well, here we go again. So here we go again. The Discussing Network presents Discussing Who, a Doctor Who podcast. I'm Kyle Jones, and I want to start this week by welcoming back Clarence Brown. Mr. Brown, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. As always, glad to be on with you guys talking about Doctor Who, and hope everybody is having a great week. So glad to be here.
Indeed, indeed. Glad to have you here as always, and glad to always be able to say, welcome back, Lee Shackelford. Mr. Shackelford, how are you?
I'm so glad. Oh, that was the other show.
yeah,
Yeah.
mixing
did
streams
that.
here.
Yeah. I'm
We've
well,
not had
sir.
our musical episode like we did on Star Trek Strange New
Strange New
Worlds.
Worlds.
Yes.
But I
But
believe that one of our friends over there said that the Doctor Who musical is inevitable, and I kind of think he may be right. So we shall see. We shall see.
so, gentlemen, it's been a little while. Just a little bit of time has passed since we've recorded, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. Missed you guys. Glad to be back together discussing Who. So, I don't have any news Doctor Who wise, but I do have an interesting and funny story from our friend and listener, Tina Mullen. And she writes us on Facebook and says that she was ordering some Doctor Who merchandise from Hallmark. And I think what she meant were the little Funko Pops that, um, if you're looking at the video, you can see behind me there's a Missy in the top left hand corner,
Yeah.
those little things. So there was so basically she was ordering some Doctor Who merchandise. She called her local Hallmark, she placed the order, and then the clerk called her back approximately 10 minutes later. She knew that she ordered 5 different Doctor Who items, but the clerk only had 4 written down. Can either of you guess what Doctor Who related character was missing from the 5 items that the clerk forgot to write down?
Wow, I feel like I'm taking a test right now.
Yeah. Not without more information, I don't think.
All right, so I will
4 out of
say
5.
this again. Ordered 5 items.
Mm-hmm.
The
Okay, fair.
clerk forgot to write one of them down. What
It was
was
either.
the one that the clerk forgot?
Was it the silence figure?
Ding, 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 ding.
Okay.
It's either got to be that or the memory worm. He didn't have his gloves on when he touched the memory worm.
I'm like, where are we going with this? I'm so confused.
Yeah.
You're right. That
So
is
that-
perfect, though.
That
That's
is perfect, and
Yeah.
that is exactly what happened. Tina goes on to say that the item that was missing was the silence, just as you guys said. She
Yep.
started laughing and asked the clerk if she was kidding. The clerk did not know what she was talking about and apologized for forgetting to write it down.
I hope
then-
she explained. Yes.
Yes. She goes on to explain why this was so funny, as the clerk obviously had not seen Doctor Who before. She thanked her for the story and said she would definitely be sharing the story with other Who fans. Hence, she let us know, and hence, we're letting the masses know. Awesome story.
Awesome sauce. Thank you for that.
That is the kind of story you can't make up.
That's
Exactly.
fabulous.
So, Clarence, if there are anyone listening or watching and they are interested in making sure that they listen to us, number one, but also in how they could reach out to us, how would they do that?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for watching or listening right now. And if you want to hit us up, you can hit us up at Discussing Who on any and all social medias. Hopefully, you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, but also make sure you subscribe to our podcast feeds where you can get a dose of us every now and then in your podcatcher.
Right. No more than you want. Just the right
just
amount.
enough, just
Yeah.
enough.
Just
And we keep knocking on the door of 300. So we've had less content this year because of scheduling, but we are knocking on the door of 300 and will obviously surpass 300 this year. But Lee, you also have something that you like telling people who are listening and are watching, and that might be what?
well, always just thank you. Thank you for taking this time because we know you got other things you could be doing. And yeah, we just appreciate you spending the time with us.
Indeed, indeed. So we don't have a review per se tonight, but what we are going to talk about is a retcon. And we all know that retcons have happened in Doctor Who as well as other medium. So that is going to be the focus of our discussion tonight. So I want to start out by talking about what is a retcon. So I spent some time before we got started to look up some various definitions. And so let's start from the top. A retcon is short for retroactive continuity. It is a literary device that It's a literary device that refers to the act of changing a fictional narrative by introducing new information in a later work. The new information recontext blah 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 blah
Retroactively?
No, well, something like that.
Recontextualizes. Yes.
There you go.
I
That's
think,
the
okay.
word.
What
It
a word.
It reformats previously established events and characters. It goes on to say that an example, which I thought was really poetic and appropriate, an example of the use is we're given a retcon of Wilf's absence from Donna's wedding in The Runaway Bride by saying he had the Spanish flu. So there you go. So, gentlemen, I have a question for you. And Lee, I'm going to point this to you first. In media, and this could be audio fiction, this could be comic books or literary fiction, or this could be on the screen, big or small. Are retcons necessary?
Boy, that's a good question. Because, yeah, define necessary. I think a lot of us as fans, we appreciate it because we know that something doesn't jibe somewhere. And if someone can come up with a brilliant explanation that actually makes it all right, I always appreciate that. So, yeah, necessary, I don't know, but appreciated, sure.
Okay. Clarence, do you think retcons in various media are necessary?
I don't know. I think a certain amount of retconning is done in our brain when we're trying to figure out like how something may have occurred or may have happened on a particular show. So I think it's necessary in the sense that it gives more meat to the bone, as you like to say, Mr. Jones. So definitely when you're wanting to see something in a slightly different view, or maybe just totally different from what you imagine the backstory for a particular character or a particular show to be, I think it is very necessary in those cases. Especially if the author is trying to, or the writer is trying to push the story in a particular direction.
All right. So I'm going to stay with you, Clarence, and put a question that I didn't originally have on my list, but I'm going to ask it based on both of your responses. Are retcons, if they're not necessary, let's just say that they are, is there a difference between a retcon and a reinterpretation of the character? And let me tell you an example of what I mean. The way the MCU and the movie verse from the comic books, for me, that is a reinterpretation of the comics, not a retcon. It doesn't take away what's the comics lore. So there you go as far as an reinterpretation. Are what distinguishes from a reinterpretation? Maybe I just answered my own question, but what
Well,
distinguishes a reinterpretation from a retcon? Thoughts?
Yeah, and I'm also thinking like, what distinguishes a retcon from just telling a part of the story that the authors never or the writers have never told? What just because there's a black box sitting there isn't necessarily a retcon because they choose to tell that story now. So I don't know. I think I'm kind of fuzzy on that point.
yeah. If somebody comes along and tells a story that changes the way you see that character or the events that have happened in the past, yeah, is that a retcon, or is that just
Telling a story.
we're just disclosing new information? It's just, yeah. Uh,
For instance, I
mm,
guess we can, I don't know if I'm getting off the rails here, Kyle, let me know.
No, keep going.
But the recent Book of Boba Fett series,
mm,
and I'm sure a lot of Star Wars fans had a particular mode or idea of how this character should operate in their mind. And also and maybe this was a retcon because there's been comics that have filled in some of the gaps. So
mhm.
when you get into, and maybe we can even talk about this A level or a beta level canon, and what is superior to the other. So you definitely have a lot of cases, and even in this happens in Star Trek a lot too, where you have books or comics that have filled in the gap during dark times or off season and given us backstory for a particular character, but then they come in and the top level, whether that be the movies or the TV show, comes in and changes that totally. Like for me, in particular, there's been a couple of great Star Trek Discovery books, and one of them was covering they was covering Michael Burnham and Spock going out on an adventure, and this was after season 1 of Discovery. So Spock wasn't on Discovery yet at that
Oh,
point.
whoa, yeah.
And there was just this great adventure. Somebody, it may have been David Mack, wrote this great book about Burnham and Spock on an adventure. I loved it. Clever writing, one of the best Star Trek stories I've ever read.
Hmm.
And then season 2 comes and they forget about all that happening. They write a
Yeah,
totally different story with Spock, and that book is basically just dead for all intents and purposes. I mean, it's
It's a
still out
mirror
there, but
universe, maybe.
yeah.
yeah, I guess you could say that. But yeah, I don't know. It's a very good question, and again, I'm trying to piece in my mind what is actual retcon versus telling the story versus, I guess, again, when you have this beta level canon, um, it could truly be a retcon if people are looking at that book and comic book canon, or is
Thoughts,
it
Lee?
canon?
Well, you know what I'm thinking about is Superman. Um, Originally, we were told that people on Krypton are superheroic. They look like us, but they have powers and abilities beyond those of mortal men. Well, now there's
Mm,
only one left, and he's living among us.
mm,
Somewhere along the way, and I profess to know the history, but I don't know what happened. But we said, no, they're just like the rest of us. They have a red sun. And it turns out that if you take a Kryptonian and expose them to a yellow sun, which, if you know anything about stellar physics, that's anyway, uh, it wouldn't make that much difference. But now he's got superpowers, and that's why.
Mm.
Um, does that change the character? Does that change anything about story? It opens story possibilities.
yeah.
That we're gonna, put him under a red sun, or we're gonna, things like that. But you know,
So,
is it a retcon?
so speaking of Superman,
Hmm.
the original Superman, per se, the Golden Age Superman, could not
Hmm.
fly.
Right.
He
Yeah.
leaped tall
He's able
buildings
to
in a
leap
single
tall
bound.
buildings. Yeah.
Right.
And he
So,
was and he was not invulnerable.
no.
Yeah. So yeah, the sort of gradual retconning with Superman. But then I think this is closer to what you're talking about. Then we had this. wonderful time in the 80s when John Byrne they just handed Superman over to him. And he said, let's just back up and rethink a lot of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And for one thing, wouldn't Clark Kent be this massively muscled guy? And how do we explain that? And
Mm-hmm.
he had a very reasonable explanation for that.
1986's The Man of Steel.
The Man of Steel, yeah. And
Yeah.
I love those comics because it felt like they were really taking those things seriously. The first time Lois comes to Clark's apartment, he's got this tremendous weight set in there, and she's there, picking up one of his hand weights, and she says, "Well, I always wondered about that. Of course you've got a home gym. You look like it."
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was just for show, but it made sense.
So, what in your mind, and Clarence, I want to go back to you. What makes a retcon successful?
Ooh. So I'll go back to Doctor Who with this one specifically. And again, I'm not quite sure what is considered a retcon in the Doctor Who world, because I don't really read a lot of the Big Finish stuff or haven't read a lot of the novels. So to me, the TV is prime. What we see on the television is canon, and what they give me isn't necessarily a retcon, but it does recontextualize how we see some of the characters. So I don't know if I'm going to Doctor Who. I mean, I think I don't know if I want to give Kyle's big example here, but what was done recently with Chibnall and the Timeless Child, I think is a prime example of maybe a retcons to people's thinking of what the original line of Doctors has been so far. And I can definitely see if we have these people that keep regenerating, there may be some backstory we don't know about, or maybe there's more regenerations that we don't know about. But basically making basically the Doctor's Jesus at the time Wars
Yeah.
now, which is a totally different tangent you could go on. So I don't know, man. Did I answer your question? I feel like
No. You did, because I wanted your opinion on your thoughts. And Lee, to you, what makes a retcon successful?
I feel like if as an audience member, as a fan, if I've started having lingering questions about something, and then a writer artist comes along and says, "Here's what really happened," and I go, "That explains it. Yeah, I'm happy now." To me, that's a successful retcon.
Good point.
There's things about the Star Trek calendar, for example, that I still don't fully understand, but I accept them because they did this embarrassing thing on the original series when they said that Khan and the rest of his super soldiers have been put into suspended animation in the 1990s. Well, you look at him and you think, well, that means he's alive now, right? In 1967. You're like, hang on a minute. And that also means that we better hurry up and develop not only interstellar travel, but suspended animation in the next few years. But we're going to have the Earth divided into warlords between now and then. Well, none of that happened, thank God. But that leaves now Star Trek with the problem of, the Earth wasn't ruled by mutants. And so what do we do about that? Well, somebody writing the novels had this idea about how to slide the 23rd century a little further away from the 20th century than it had been. And that seems to work. So we're not troubled by that anymore. That the Third World War is still in our future. So, I consider that a successful retcon, and that works. People are still arguing about why in Wrath of Khan recognizes Chekhov when Chekhov wasn't in Space Seed. But, if you want to fight about that, you can. Anyway.
So give me, and Lee, I wanted to point this one to you. Give me an example, and I think you've started this a little bit in one of your previous answers, but give an example outside of Doctor Who, in your opinion, is a retcon that worked.
Yeah. re-explaining the dates for the the Third World War and all that stuff in Star Trek does seem to work to me. I'm a little embarrassed that that's my example because I don't remember what the explanation is or how it works. Um, and and you asked us about this, a week ago, and I said, yeah, I need to spend some time coming up with a really solid example, and I haven't done it. So, yeah,
Well,
I didn't do my homework.
well, but you gave
But
the Superman earlier, which
yeah,
is actually the one I had written down was Superman
mm,
flying. That
yeah.
was so not in the original. So, what about you, Clarence? An example
Wow.
outside of Doctor Who of a retcon that worked?
Worked for me, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. You get to define what worked means.
Man, I don't want to give another Star Trek one, but I think that's the one that's at the top of mine. Um, I don't know. Why don't you answer that, Walkable?
Okay,
Yeah.
well, Superman, and actually, your lack of being able to answer that question honestly is consistent because I've asked
Well,
that to a handful of people. I've asked the pro and the con of this, and it's interesting. And I think it goes back into our earlier question of what makes a retcon successful.
well,
You
well,
forget the retcons that are successful because
yeah.
you accept them.
Well. Here's one that worked for me that I know
oh,
you guys hate. Is Clara falling through time? And to me, it really doesn't make a lot of difference to the story of the Doctor, but
hmm.
I just thought it made for cool scenes with Clara
Well, yeah.
in the Doctor's background. But is that a retcon? Yeah, kind of, because she's the one who tells him to choose the TARDIS. I know that makes everybody
Hmm.
mad, but she's the one who tells him to choose the TARDIS that he chooses. And she is running all through his history. So, yeah, for me, that worked. For
Hmm.
me, and I'm coming from a familiarity where I don't really know the classic as much. So for me to see that character running around with the classic Doctors, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So it worked for me, but the larger audience, nah, not so much.
I actually think it worked. And I
Yeah.
think it worked in the fundamental part of spoilers. She wasn't known slash seen because they purposely make the comment that he never sees me, well, almost never, and
Yeah.
then the 11th Doctor sees her, and that's the snowman story. But for the most part, she wasn't acknowledged, she wasn't known. So you added a layer with the example you gave, but you
Hmm.
didn't take away from any of those stories that she impacted. You just now know a little bit more about the story. Hence, going
Yeah.
back to making successful, you accepted it. We
Yeah.
accepted it because it didn't break, it layered.
Yeah. And I know you
Yeah.
said not Doctor Who, but that's what I got.
Got
But it raises an interesting point too, because my sole objection to the idea of, Clara being sort of scattered along the Doctor's timeline um, is that I prefer the explanation in the Doctor's Wife, the Neil Gaiman story, that the TARDIS chose him,
Mm,
yeah.
and
yeah.
so the show offers us in canon two explanations for why the Doctor has that TARDIS, and I just like the other one better.
Within a year or
So
two of each other, even
right,
that.
so so does one of them negate the other? I don't know. The TARDIS and Clara could either one be wrong about what happened. It's just what they choose to believe and what they're reporting. So I don't know.
All right. So I want to
Um,
take it to the opposite, to the negative. We said of an example of a retcon outside of Doctor Who that worked. Give me an example of a retcon outside of Doctor Who that, in your opinion, failed. I actually have three examples.
I got
oh, good.
a
Okay,
good one.
Clarence, go for it.
Yeah.
So there was this movie called The Wolverine, and they had this character called Deadpool in it. Um, and again, I guess this was not a retcon to that universe at the time. It wasn't a retcon
Mm,
to that Fox verse at the time, but you had a Deadpool that looked very different from the Deadpool all the fans know and loved. He
mm,
had the Merc with the mouth, didn't have the mouth, and people hated it, obviously. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a case where it failed miserably, and they later fixed it in the Fox universe. So, good for them. They retconned the retcon.
You can do that.
Lee, example for you. Retcon
Of
that
a
did
retcon
not
that
work
just does not work. Yeah, I really
outside of
have.
Doctor Who.
Right. I really have failed to do my homework on this one because I know there's examples. I just can't think. I thought of another example of one that does work, but
Okay, go for it.
it's just all out of sequence. Um, in one of the Sherlock Holmes stories, Dr. Watson is married, and his wife begins one of the stories by saying he's got a call to go out as a doctor. She says, "Oh, James, do you have to go?" This is just the author not paying attention. Watson's name is John. Oops. Well, no less a person than mystery writer Dorothy Sayers took up the challenge, and she said, "We know that his name is John, and we know that his middle initial is H. We've never been told what his middle name is. I think he has the fine Scottish name Hamish, from which one could conceivably draw the nickname James. His wife calls him James because his middle name is Hamish." And that has become practically Sherlock Holmes canon. When you see people writing out his whole name, they write it as John Hamish Watson
Wow.
because it explains that apparent goof.
Consistency, yeah.
That's a lot of backflips to get there.
Yeah, it is a little mind teasing, but yeah. So yeah, that may be an example of one that doesn't work if your response is, "Oh, come on." But yeah, but Sherlockians have embraced that one. So yeah, whether it actually makes sense or not. So
But do you guys see this tapestry that we're seeing that's weaved between this entire conversation, which is we accept the ones that we like, we reject the ones that we don't like, whether it's singular, meaning me, you, and
Right.
you, or if it's the mass consciousness. And here are three examples I have. With Marvel Comics, retconning the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver as not being mutants, not being Magneto's child or children, simply because at the time they did not have the rights to mutants and they wanted to have them in the Avengers. So the comics retcon that. I don't like that. Staying with comics, much of DC Comics' New 52 initiative in 2011 made many of the characters unrecognizable. Therefore,
Was that a reboot or a retcon, though?
ooh, there's yet another. Yeah.
yeah, very good point. Now, this, I think, will be a true retcon. And Clarence, I'm pretty sure you haven't seen this. Lee, maybe. I was a kid. I remember watching this. Bobby Ewing returning from the dead at the end of Dallas season 9.
Yeah.
So, Lee, would you like to share with Clarence what happened and how they explain Bobby returning?
I was just aware of it culturally that people were kind of up in arms about it, but I was not watching the show, so I didn't.
So the actor Patrick Duffy left and was killed off the show at the end of Dallas season 8. They had Dallas season 9, and sometime within the span of that season, and the ratings were plummeting. The powers that be reached out, agreed, and Patrick Duffy said he would return. They were unsure of how to bring him back. So therefore, at the end of the season, Bobby's wife wakes up to Bobby in the shower and realizes, oh, the entire season was a dream.
The entire season.
The entire season.
Eighth season of Dallas, yeah.
Yes, entire, not just his death, but everything that happened since.
That's too much.
So you had to bring back people
There you
who
go.
had left the show. You had to let go people who had been brought on in that season. And the fans had to forget everything they had watched over 20-something odd episodes to have him. That is, to me, the perfect example of a failed retcon.
to be beaten only by the Newhart show,
Ye-
Newhart,
yes.
in which we learned in the last moments that the entire series has been a dream.
Point taken.
Yeah,
What?
but but that was a joke, and you know I think we all got a good laugh out of it because you're probably fans of his previous series, and yeah, they reappointed the bedroom set from his original from the Bob Newhart show, and had him wake up in bed with Suzanne Plachette, his wife from the previous series, and said, "I just had the strangest dream."
Oh, wow.
I was in
So
an inn
you
in New Hampshire or something,
yeah,
Vermont.
you should
or
wear
wherever.
more sweaters. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a joke, and I think for a lot of people of a certain age, it was a joke about Dallas.
Mm,
But
so that came after the Dallas.
yes,
Yeah.
many years later. So it's sort of like, yeah, we're winking in the direction of how stupid that whole conception was on Dallas that whole season. Yeah, thank God Doctor Who's never done an episode where the whole episode was just a dream, and we should just forget about it.
Yes. Yes.
Spoilers.
Spoilers. All right. So, question: since 2005, for Doctor Who, can you think of another retcon to Doctor Who canon other than the timeless child? And Clarence, you've already mentioned Clara going down the Doctor's time stream. Lee, do you have one?
Where is the Eye of Harmony?
Where is it indeed?
Uh, According to the classic series, it's on Gallifrey, and all TARDISes are connected to it. In the rebooted series, we learned that it's in the TARDIS. So, okay. And I remember that when I guess that's, I can't remember now what episode in which we established that, but I remember when we discussed it on this show at the time, I said it's dimensionally transcendental. I think that it's on Gallifrey and it's in the TARDIS. You know, what's the problem? You know, so but that's my reboot or an associated concept I was actually about to ask you guys about. How do you think headcanon relates to this? Because that's a new word in the dictionary.
Yeah.
Because every fan has got their own interpretation of events, and sometimes we make up things in order to bridge the gaps or to retcon things to our own. Yeah, that's my headcanon about the Eye of Harmony. You know,
And then sometimes I think there's a shared headcanon. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
well,
the same ideas have kind of been reverberated between different YouTubers, podcasters, and it's just kind of accepted, though not official, kind of the accepted canon for a particular event.
yeah,
That's not really been documented. So
No, I know. I think you are both spot on because I think I have fun saying sometimes it's my reality and I choose to live in it.
that's right.
You know, but that's headcanon. I mean, that's your
how it works.
interpretation. And you know, as a collective, think about how many times the three of us tend to agree in what we're watching, and maybe because of the fact that we know the likes and dislikes of the other two so well, perhaps.
Yeah,
So for me, my other example was the War Doctor.
yeah, I was thinking about that one.
You know, to me, that is the perfect example of layering canon without breaking Doctor Who canon. You know, you explained it in a way that didn't invalidate something,
yeah,
but you enhanced it and yet still had it. So he still exists. He can be explained, but he doesn't break. So now we come to the question.
Well, can I add another one?
Yes, sir,
real quick?
please.
And I know, Callie, I know you love this one. And it's since been proven to actually be a canon thing that could happen. You know, when we first saw the fourth come back as the curator and, you know, says sometimes maybe he revisits some faces. I was, they just threw that in there for a happy little, you know, anniversary thing. Like, they'll never do that. No, they won't do it. And since, spoilers if you're not up to date, we see that the Doctor really can and does revisit some faces. So for me, at first, I thought that felt like a maybe not a retcon, but more of a story explanation just to get this old character back.
Yeah.
And since has been proven canon going forward from that point. So, yeah.
Yep. I never forget a face. I know you don't. And in the years to come, you might find yourself revisiting a few, but just the old favorites say.
Yeah.
So there you go. Yes, and very good point. It is, but see, that is using, and Chibnall did this, whether it was already decided who was coming back or not. You took something that was stated, and then layered it. I know I keep using the layered, but to me, I think that's what really is good about a retcon is if it doesn't destroy, it layers. So,
Yeah, I like that.
Depends on the definition of destroy. I guess.
yeah,
But go ahead. I'm
because
sorry.
Right.
you can peel away the layer, and you can still have the base still there. You can exist without whatever retcon you put on top of it.
Yeah, you're reminding me of things that don't work now. I'm about 5 minutes behind you in this whole conversation. But Star Trek V asks us to believe that Spock has always had a renegade brother that he has never, ever mentioned in any way, shape, or form. And I just kind of left the theater going, no, just no. So I'm not willing to go any further with that. Discovery asks us to believe that he has, in addition, a sister that he's never mentioned. And I said, no, absolutely not. I'm just, no.
But I have to ask the question, once they gave you an explanation as to why he never mentioned her, did that change the no?
No, it didn't, because I didn't buy the explanation. I always say, I'll just give me an explanation, but it does have to be, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they did the same for Sabak, but it didn't work for a lot of people either. I think people believe that more than the Michael Burnham thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think I'll go with Cybok before I'll go with as crazy
Definitely
as
a
that is.
stretch.
Yeah, but it's still a stretch. And I
But see,
just,
this is a perfect example of headcanon. I accept the Michael Burnham thing because I don't have the headcanon that you do for Star Trek the way, I lack that. So it was easier for me in my headspace to say, oh, that's cool. So that explains
Yeah.
it. Now I know
okay,
why.
yeah, right.
Whereas for you, it's a little bit more difficult because it's broken. It goes against what you have established for so long as the truth.
That's right. Yeah.
So, speaking of breaking the truth of what we've
Yeah.
known so long to be the truth, we all know the timeless child. I'm not going to rehash what the timeless child is, but I have a question, and you can elaborate as much or as little as you want. Should RTD retcon the timeless child? Clarence Brown, you're smiling, so it goes to you. Yes or no?
Retcon the retcon. Oh, man. I think you run into a problem when you have too much of this. Each showrunner coming in and putting their own stamp, but changing it in a way that might be better for the fandom or better for them. Who knows? If we want to talk about another example, we can talk about the Star Wars sequels and how Rian Johnson came and did an episode 8 that was universally, well, not universal. Half of the people hated it, half of the people loved it.
Yep.
And you had Abrams come back after the first movie. He comes back to the last movie of the trilogy and kind of just pretends a lot of that stuff didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I think you get into this back and forth. Should he totally undo what Chibnall did, or should he finesse it into something that works for everybody?
Well, that's
Maybe say,
interesting.
yeah, I think there's room to finesse it, but I think to totally outright say it didn't happen or it was a lie, I would probably be a little miffed if they said it was a lie, the doctor lies or something like that to explain it off as well. So finesse it. That's what I want.
All right, Lee, what say ye?
Well, I have been, my attitude about the timeless child has been nuke it from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. So, but Clarence has got me thinking about this, and I think, I think the man is right that if we get a future Doctor Who story coming up soon, where we just say that was the Master, which is my explanation. That's my head canon. Is this whole thing is some kind of a manipulation of the Master? Um, that would feel like just sort of like vengeance, wouldn't it? Just sort of feel like RTD is coming in and saying, "Take that."
Yeah.
You know? um, I don't know. I still wouldn't be sad, but it might seem petty. But yeah, if there's a way to do it that is really intriguing and respectful, even to the
Yeah.
concept, then that could be thrilling. Um, yeah, I just want it to go away. That's all.
Yeah.
It just
So I think what's going to happen is I think we're just going to ignore it.
Mm.
You
well,
know,
we've done
and,
that before, so
and
yeah.
just move forward. I'm not saying that's the right thing, but honestly, having lived through the Chibnall era, I would rather RTD focus on not correcting something or redoing something from Chibnall's era and tell his own stories.
Sure.
I'd rather, if I'm getting a story from RTD, I would rather it be for the purpose of advancing Doctor Who, not trying to sweep up what I personally, in my head canon, call a cluster from Chibnall.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
But can you advance it if you choose to ignore it? I mean, there's all these hanging chads or things that have happened in Doctor Who, which we are forming our own headcanon to figure out what actually happened.
Right.
I think the granddaughter thing might be the biggest thing, but there's things throughout Doctor Who that haven't been resolved. And I think from not being that familiar with the classic, I think all of those are kind of small in comparison to what Chibnall did to the canon. So would to ignore it be saying that we choose to accept it? I think we'd just be saying that you accept it. We just move
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah. I
true.
think I think ignoring it is accepting it. Yeah.
Very
So yeah,
good.
he's kind of. I think he's stuck with having to respond to it in some way.
So,
But
Clarence Brown, I want to ask this one to you. How would you, not how you think RTD, but how you would retcon the Timeless Child if you were writing?
I would nuke it from space. No. I think they were going down an interesting path with this parallel universe thing. I'm not really a writer, so I don't know how you would make that work. But I think something to do with this parallel universe thing that we saw at near the end of Chibnall's run, I think that could be used to. I wouldn't want to reset everything, but it kind of could be used maybe to cleverly explain some of the things going on. I'm not the writer, so I really can't say
Yeah.
how. But again, we saw other things that happened during Chibnall's run that we still have to explain, like the whole entire universe being swallowed up by the flux, just
Yes.
about.
that's true.
And then the next day, everything's back to normal, or
Normal,
is it?
quote unquote.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to clean up if we want to get deep on it. So I don't know, man. I don't know.
So the doctor wakes up and
It was all a dream.
Patrick Duffy steps out of the shower.
Oh, that would be too good.
Wait. The first scene of the 60th anniversary is, and I'm so sorry for saying this because this has nothing bad on Jodie Whittaker, but we see in the first scene, we see Peter Capaldi regenerate into David Tennant.
Oh boy.
or into or into Shooty,
True.
and Shooty says, "I had the strangest
Angels
dream."
dream.
Yeah,
Well, he is like off in some dream world, the void or something from
And
the
he wants to know what
previews.
the hell is going
there you
on
go.
here.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
true.
mean, that might be where they're going. We don't know here.
So how would you retcon, Lee?
Um, I still like the idea of it being something that the master is doing as part of his giant mad plan, um, but I also like the idea of taking advantage of the fact that there is another universe in which that is what happened. That's just not the one that we live in. The one we live in, the doctor that was traveling with his granddaughter is the first doctor, the one who was born on Gallifrey and grew up and was boyhood friends with the master and stuff like that. You know, I
Yeah.
we're back to talking about DC Comics again. You know, there was a point at which we said, you know, the superheroes in our stable in the 40s were completely different from their characters who have the same names in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Wonder Woman and Superman, they fought in World War II. You know, Wonder Woman's immortal, we guess. Superman, what's his deal? How old are these people?
Mm-hmm.
And so we said, well, there's multiple Earths there, you know? And then we've had an infinitude of parallel Earths and that. So, you know, why not?
So here's, go ahead, Clarence.
Well, I'll let you get your idea out because I mean, Lee kind of sent me my brain going down this path, but I'll let you go ahead with your
All right,
idea
let me
first.
say
They
this
should
real
just hire
quick.
the three of us and let us fix this.
So here is my retconning of the Timeless Child. Everything we saw on screen still happened. Okay. However, the so it's a two-part retcon. The Timeless Child is actually, and I think I've heard other people say this too, or read other people saying this. The Timeless Child, as the master presented it, was from what he saw in the Matrix, which inexplicitly stops before it reveals all. So he has assumed that the Timeless Child is the doctor. The Timeless Child, in fact, is actually Susan, which would then explain why the doctor was taking her away from Gallifrey, because he was trying to save her. So the doctor is still the doctor. Susan is the Timeless Child that is the basis for all Time Lord technology and blah, 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 blah. And part B of that is, if we want to still keep the fugitive doctor as the doctor, she goes into what I think you said, Lee, that she should have been, is between the second and the third doctor. And her mind was manipulated and she didn't know who she was. And that's why she thinks that she's a previous incarnation. She's actually a some kind of something or whatnot. So,
And you know, this is one of those things where if you accept that retcon, then it changes the way we look at something else. Because when we meet the third doctor, he is completely disoriented. And that sort of laid the groundwork for our having the, well, we done it with the second doctor too, but this idea that after you're regenerated, you don't know who you are. But we've attributed that to him having just been the second doctor. What if he's just been the fugitive doctor? Yeah.
and forced regeneration back into
Right. Back
there.
to, yeah. And so that's why he comes out, he falls on his face the first time we see him.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I quite like that. And I love the meta of Susan being the timeless child, because when we know that pilot episode is called An Unearthly Child.
Child. Mm-hmm.
And I like it. And we see her before we see the doctor.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So,
Interesting.
so there we go. So Clarence, you were going down a rabbit hole. So
Yeah, I mean, your idea was so good. I don't even know if I should even say what I was thinking. but for some reason I got in my head where it would be really cool if we had an anthology style Doctor Who for say the next 10 years. Say something crazy happens, and when the Doctor regenerates, it splits them into all these different doctors. And for the next 10 years, each season, we get a totally different Doctor, totally different adventures. And then somehow they have some grand finale for the, 70th to bring it all
Sure.
back together. I don't know why that popped in my head, but I thought that would be really cool. Unrelated to what anything we were talking about.
I don't know. You've mentioned that before, and I do think that's an interesting idea. It would be fun to recast. I mean, we basically recast the first Doctor now, thanks to David Bradley. And wouldn't it be fun now to have somebody else be the second Doctor and give Sean Pertwee a crack at being the third Doctor, and before he gets too old, and so on and so forth. I don't know. It would be fun.
Well, what I do know, and this is not a retcon, it is an established fact that I like to say that I have come to the end of all of my questions, and am curious, gentlemen, do you have anything else you would like to bring up before we close?
I think everyone should be subscribing to Discussing Trek, which is my new favorite podcast, and not just because I've been on it recently, but just Clarence runs a tight ship over there. He's he keeps it moving.
I try.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
I like that.
indeed. And Clarence, I have to ask you, if anyone wanted to do that, where might they go?
Just like you can follow Discussing Who on any and all social medias, you can do the same with Discussing Trek. So check us out.
When you say any and all,
That's kind of
I always wonder about that. Yeah.
I just think it sounds cool. Maybe it's kind of a.
Oh no, I mean, there's a lot of social media platforms out
And
there.
there's more and more.
Follow us on
every day.
Threads.
I just
Threads.net. You can.
Are we on X? You're on X.
We're leaving X.
We're
Yeah.
leaving it.
I already did. So yeah,
We're just going to X that for blue skies. Who knows?
exactly. So
So is Musk Twitter's Chibnall? Inquiring Minds. I'm joking, guys.
Musk
Okay,
is
well-
Twitter's jumping the shark
or something.
or something.
Yeah.
And that, for everyone listening, is the true thing to ponder. And as
Yeah.
always, we will be back next time.